music is incredibly important to the narrative of Night in the Woods. May is a bass player and practices 3 times with her friends as a member of the Party Barn Garage Band. Casey was a drummer, and as I discussed in his video, you can feel his absence in the notes and rhythm every time the gang gets together to jam. The Black Goat doesn't speak to its followers and those who have the glimmer, it sings to them. But I think my favorite use of music in Night in the Woods is with the Deep Hollow Hollerers, perhaps better known as the band that May sees in her dream segments. Through a beautiful marriage of story and gameplay, the Deep Hollow Hollerers, or the DHH, as those who don't want to get tongue-twisted call them, guide May through her nighttime escapades, shed serious light on the game's lore, and open up some interesting pathways for theory and speculation. But before I go on, if you are a Night in the Woods fan, then please be sure to like, subscribe, and consider supporting me with a YouTube channel membership or over on Patreon. My dream is to make these videos full-time someday, and by doing any of those things, you'll be helping make that dream a reality. May encounters the DHH for the first time on day 5, in her second dream segment. Now, just to be clear, I'm going to refer to these segments as dreams, but whether or not that's an accurate description of what's going on here is open for debate. As I've discussed elsewhere, Night in the Woods is interpretable enough that you can view all of the mystical elements, like the cult and the Black Goat, as 100% real. Or you can look at all of those things as a metaphor for May's mental state and the political underpinnings of many Rust Belt regions. The same is true of these dream segments. They might just be dreams, but there's evidence in the game that suggests that May is actually astral projecting to other realms. Or maybe she's just tripping hardcore on the gas that's leaking up from the mines. In any case, you're welcome to disagree, but my personal belief is that these are dreams in which May is astral projecting to other realms. We'll talk more about why I feel this way later on, when we get into the lore behind the DHH, and even more when I break down these dreams on a case-by-case basis down the road in future videos. But for now, that's what I, personally, think is going on here. So, in these dreams, where May astral projects to other realms, she always has a task of some kind, something she needs to do before she can return to the waking world. Starting on day 5, that task is to travel around the dream realm and find these band boxes. When she does, a member of the DHH will appear and begin to play their instrument. There are 4 members: a violinist, an accordion player, a tuba player, and a saxophone player. Specifically, for all of you musicians out there, it's clearly an alto sax. As a guy with a background in jazz, the alto sax is easily one of my favorite instruments. And what happens as May gets the members of the DHH to appear is easily one of my favorite parts of Night in the Woods. As each one appears on their band box, their section of the level's song starts to play, building up until all 4 instruments are playing together in harmony. It's such a beautiful blending of music, story, and game design, as all 3 elements unite to create a scene that's only possible through the uniquely interactive medium of video games. There were many moments that showed me just how special an experience Night in the Woods was going to be, but the swell of emotions I had when watching the band come together to play Astral Alley on my first run might be my number 1. It's the kind of memory I wish I could wipe from my mind just so I could relive it all over again. Back at the start of each level, there are 4 lights, which look like miniature band boxes if you ask me. Each light corresponds with one of the band members, and when a band member starts to play, the light switches on. Once the entire DHH is playing, May should return to these lights, at which point a massive supernatural being will appear. In Astral Alley, it's a bear. In Astral Coal Town, it's a squirrel. In Astral Train, it's the maw of a giant alligator. And in Astral Fish, it's a bird. I think it's either a heron or a pelican that eats a fish. Once they appear, May wakes up and is left to wonder what the hell she just saw. Though Astral Fish is the final dream where the DHH shows up, this run of dreams ends in earnest when May meets the Sky Cat. or the Ass Cat, who straight up tells May that she won't be having these dreams any longer. And she doesn't. So the Cat of the Ass certainly seems to have some influence over or impact on her experiences in these astral dreams. But that's a conversation for another time. After her meeting with the Sky Cat, all threads seem to go cold on the DHH and the nature of these bizarre dreams. But the Weird Autumn edition, the MVP for us Night in the Woods story and lore fanatics, did provide some closure on this mystery. On day 9, the day after the mandatory trip to the library, you'll notice something different about Town Center. The new background theme, The Long Fall, is playing, but there's someone harmonizing with it on violin. Climb the rooftops and you'll find the source of it, a musician named Salim. He won't have much to say at this point, and is rather annoyed by May's intrusion. On the same day, with the benefit of access to the stairwell in Greg and Angus's apartment building, you can take the rooftops about as far west as you can go, at which point you'll find this door, which leads to the Husker Bee Ballroom, an old, dilapidated music hall. Inside, Sadie, a saxophonist, is playing some tunes by herself. By talking to both Salim and Sadie, May can encourage them to meet up and play together, which they'll end up doing on day 11, right before the climax. It's yet another example of one of the many truly helpful things May does during the 2 weeks we spend with her in Possum Springs. She's not quite Sam Porter Bridges, but she really does bring people together. Hilariously, when May sees this, she makes a comment about them falling in love, which of course makes the whole thing very, very weird. Typical May, she just can't keep her foot out of her mouth. Anyway, after talking with Salim and Sadie, May can find some posters for the DHH, which leads to a pretty significant lore drop from the duo. They explain that the DHH was a quartet of musicians, violin, sax, tuba, and accordion, just like the group May sees in her dreams, who were a big part of the local culture of Possum Springs back in its heyday. They played polka and waltzes, and helped people get through some of the really tough times back during the Great Depression. Eventually, the DHH started acting weird, or spooky, as Salim puts it. They started claiming that they were playing music for gods no one knew about, and that they were taking trips out of their bodies. They also stopped playing at the Husker Bee Ballroom, instead preferring to ply their trade out in the woods on bandboxes they'd made for themselves. In 1949, they were, disturbingly, found dead on these bandboxes, having died of exposure, with their instruments frozen to their bodies. As one would expect, May has a pretty strong reaction to this news. She doesn't come out and say it, but it's clear that she knows that the DHH is, no doubt, the band she's been seeing in her dreams. May then sweeps this under the rug, and Sadie and Salim celebrate their newfound friendship and the fact that music is once again playing in the Husker Bee Ballroom, ending the side quest. Now, let's dive into some speculation, because that lore drop about the DHH has some huge implications. If the entire band believed they were taking trips out of their bodies, then it certainly cements the idea that May is indeed astral projecting in her dreams. Again, it will always be open to interpretation, but it is a strong piece of evidence in favor of that particular theory. As for why May sees them in her dreams, I can't help but wonder if they died while they were astral projecting, and thus their spirits are still wandering these other realms, playing on their bandboxes for all eternity. Doesn't seem like the worst fate for a musician, if you ask me. Speaking of their fate, the way they died, playing for the gods in the woods by themselves, it reminds me of the quote from May's poem that opens the game about looking for the gods and dying in lonely places. That's certainly what happened to the DHH, and as I covered in my video on May's grandfather, that line is a quote from a story he used to read to her, meaning that perhaps there really is a long and established history of astral projectors in the Possum Springs area. As I speculated in that video, I definitely think May's grandfather shared her gift of the glimmer. If May and her grandfather had the glimmer, and it allowed them to astral project, then I think it's reasonable to assume that the same is true of the DHH. The Black Goat obviously has a connection to music. It sings to its followers. Now, does this mean that the DHH was playing for the Black Goat? Was the Black Goat the god that no one knew about? Well, yes and no. According to Sadie, they said they were playing for gods, plural, so it must have been more than one. As mentioned earlier, at the end of every dream where the DHH appears, May sees a supernatural entity right before she wakes up. Personally, I think that when the band said they were playing for the gods, I think they were talking about both the Black Goat and these entities here. I think that these entities are other gods, on the same level as the Sky Cat. Not only is the Sky Cat similar in size, but they share the same color scheme, black with a blue outline. If so, this would imply that in the Night in the Woods universe, there's a whole cosmology of entities like the Sky Cat and the Black Goat out there pulling the strings and influencing people. Sort of like the outer gods of Elden Ring, the old gods of Dragon Age, or, tracing it back to the source, H.P. Lovecraft's old ones. This isn't exactly a surprise. The presence of the Black Goat down in the mines hints at it to begin with, but the story of the DHH definitely suggests that this pantheon is, perhaps, bigger than we ever imagined. But that's just what I think about all this. What are your thoughts on the DHH and their apparent ability to astral project? Did you know about Sadie and Salim before this video, or is this your first time hearing about them? And what's your favorite of the 4 Astral songs? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Huge thanks to Alan Naslund, who allowed me to use his cover of Astral Alley for this video. To check out all of his music, just follow the link down below in the description box. Big shout out to all my Silver and Gold tier YouTube channel members and Patreon subscribers, including James Pruitt, Corey Matson, Gustavo Balabi, Lil Caesar, Reed, and Pathonian, who get early access to these videos thanks to donations of $5 to $10 a month. See you guys next time.